Working Fans Podcast. Cool.
Yep.
All right, here we go. Coming down 3, 2.
Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. This is AJ. I'm the former wrestler. We've got Dave, the ultimate fan, here with us. As we do every week, our producer Joe likes to make us sound good and makes us look way more professional than we actually are. As always, you can find us on Twitter, that's @FansWorking, Facebook, Working Fans Pod. We've got email where you can reach out to us and please contact us to let us know what you think of the podcast and for any ideas that you might have. That's workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. We're on Instagram where you can keep up with us at workingfanswrestling_pod. And then you can now listen to us on all major platforms, including Anchor.fm. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts, and you can actually check us out on YouTube. Now, it's important when you go onto the Apple Podcasts and YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating, let us know what you think so you can help us out and we can continue to do what we love and bring you guys in as fans.
It's the porno music.
All right, working fans, welcome back for another week of the 531 when we actually hit record. This is where we take our top 5 list on a particular subject, debate it down to a top 3 list, and from that top 3, we pick the number 1. This week, it is the top 5 pay-per-views that changed the industry. And this is a list, this is the first time my brother's given me a list. First time I've asked him for one, so we definitely got to include him more because this is a very interesting subject. And the list that he gave me includes Royal Rumble 98, Wrestle Kingdom 11, Over the Edge 99, King of the Ring 98, and WrestleMania 1. He included Wrestle Kingdom 11 because of the 1-hour Okada match with Omega.
That Over the Edge 99, was that the one where Owen died?
Let me check. Yeah, that is actually the one where he died.
Yeah, crazy story. Jake St. John, listener of the show, contributor, he had a story about that. So he was in his room, drunk and high as fuck, and Zach St. John comes in the room, his brother, says, Jake, did you hear what happened to Owen? And Jake's trying to fake Zach out. It's like, no, what happened? And Zach's like, well, he's dead. And Jake is like, is he hurt? And Zach's like, yeah, Jake, he's dead. So, anyway, a little story from Family Time with the St. John's, which segues into friend of the St. John's, Mike Flynn, gave us a list. And on that list is WrestleMania 1, the original. Kind of hard to argue that is probably the most instrumental pay-per-view in all pay-per-views. Or even just wrestling, maybe even beyond. Bash to the Beach 96, come on, NWO. That is kind of really the main, I'd argue the biggest storyline in wrestling history. All in, huge pay-per-view, sets tone for a lot of the wrestling we're seeing right now, and we might even still not know the historical effects of all this. TakeOver 1, maybe you won't see this a lot on the list, but I really enjoyed the fact to put TakeOver 1 on here. And Mania 17, which he said it helped introduce a lot of new talent, get them over. Rock and Austin were at a peak here, and this was also a very big buy rate for WWE at the time.
It's wild to see how many of those people from that first takeover are with the company now, because it's not many. And at the time, that was like their next group of rising stars.
Owens debuted on that, if I remember right. He's in the Powerbomb Sami Zayn after...
that is a different takeover. Takeover Arrival was like Bo Dallas.
Okay.
And some... I want to say like Tyson Kidd was on that. Sami Zayn.
They had Natalia versus Charlotte. Because Brett and Flair were in the corners. I remember that.
Yep. Yeah, that was when NXT was just like really starting to come into its own on the early end of things, and it's only gotten bigger from there.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'll bring you my list next, just to switch things up again. Number 1 on my list, I had the When Worlds Collide pay-per-view that popped up a lot on the WCW one. And I think that was just big that a pay-per-view featuring that much Mexican talent got that big in the U.S. I included WrestleMania 3 because Hogan and Andre... I mean, WrestleMania 1's big because that's where the real gamble came from. And McMahon putting it all on the line, but Hogan Andre, you can't get much bigger than that.
Brought the house.
All In was my third pick because of obviously the Bucks being able to strike out on their own and show that they can fill an arena like that. I chose Wrestle Kingdom 9 for my number 4. And I chose that card because that's the first one that ended up on American pay-per-view. Jeff Jarrett basically became a member of the Bullet Club to distribute that through Global Force Wrestling somehow to American pay-per-views. So just the fact that that was at the head of the New Japan resurgence was why I put it on there. And then obviously you got to have Bash at the Beach 96 because obviously I couldn't figure out a fifth one, so I had to steal from somebody's list.
It's a good one to steal. Probably the biggest WCW pay-per-view of all time. All right, so continuing with St. John's, that, much like Mike Flynn, has his first 2 picks are Mania 1 and Bash at the Beach 96. Then he has Mania 3, also like you had, really big one. All In, much like you and Mike had. And then Zach threw in ECW Barely Legal 97, which I believe was ECW's first pay-per-view.
Yep, that will definitely pop up on a few lists. Now, I've got a list from William Merriweather from the Rockin' Randy's Rockin' Wrestling group, and he had Starrcade, gonna assume 83. He had WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3, Bash at the Beach 96, and Survivor Series 97. Now, what's interesting to me is that WrestleMania 2, because 1, it's obviously the big gamble, 3, it's Hogan Andre, is 2 just the fact that they did it again? I mean, that had was that the Piper boxing match?
Yeah, it was in 3 locations. It was kind of a failure by a lot of people's standards because it didn't have the same buzz as Mania 1, and they struggled with the feed of trying to pull this off in 3 different locations at the time.
Yeah, they almost tried to outbig themselves with that one.
You had the Piper boxing match with T. That was the main event of one of the areas. And then the other main event, I believe in Chicago, was Battle Royal with the wrestlers, football players / wrestlers. And then the final main event was in L.A., which was Hogan and Bundy in the cage.
I mean, now that we talk it over, it's not a bad pick because it is in true Vince McMahon fashion trying to go big. And even though McMahon scaled it back, I almost feel like he was testing how big he could get. And then when that proved to not be the best idea, it's like, well, why don't we just scale it back a little bit?
Put Vince over, criticize him, wherever fence you fall on. Ain't nobody going to say this motherfucker is afraid to take chances now. Huh? Like, talk about, he definitely wanted to go big.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Who do you got a list from next?
Our boy Scott, who made sure to tell us it was Starrcade 83, Mania 1, All In, Very Legal 97, and Bash at the Beach 96. So a lot of familiar lists right there.
Yes, sir. Next up, we got Kevin Dignam from Rockin' Randy's Rockin' Wrestling Group. He has WrestleMania 3, Bash at the Beach 96, WrestleMania 13, Survivor Series 91, and Royal Rumble 92. Now, what would have happened at 13, do you think, that would have made it industry changing? Because I can't think of that offhand.
I don't know about industry changing, but it did have probably considered one of the best matches in WrestleMania history. One Jim Cornette actually called the best NWA style match he's ever seen in WWE at WrestleMania 13, and that was Bret Hart, Steve Austin in the submission match, which was more like a street fight, but ended up a submission match with Ken Shamrock as the ref. It also had the double turn.
Okay, the double turn, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Survivors.
That was the main event. The main event was Undertaker beating Sid, which Sid shit his pants, which A lot of people have said over here, you shouldn't say it. But, I think most people recognize that submission match is the best part of that WrestleMania.
Maybe, would you think the start of the Attitude Era or around the start?
You could definitely argue that. It wasn't the turn. I mean, the turn was definitely going to be the following year, even slightly after Mania. You can almost argue the next day or week after where Austin McMahon feud really started cooking. But, they were definitely starting to get edgier at that time for sure.
Yeah. Obviously, Royal Rumble 92, Flair, best Rumble ever.
You're not going to find any arguments with me of that. I think that is the MVP performance, and I love that Rumble.
Who do you got next?
Well, I got no one except for myself. You want me to read what I got here?
Yeah, you're coming in a little hot on that mic.
Oh, sorry, baby girl. That's what I do. Always coming in hot. All right, I got to start off with Mania 3 because, again, Hogan Andre, it threw the house. It's the biggest gate of all time as far as I know. And if it's not the biggest gate of all time, when you take in the time period they had it, it's probably the biggest gate of all time. Mania 1, because it's the original. Starrcade 83, because, you know what? We still have Starrcade to this day. Even if it just turned into a house show right now, we still have that pay-per-view. So I think that shows you how influential that was.
I should have had Starrcade 83. I want to be on the record about that.
And then I decided to be a little different. Bash at the Beach 96 is my last one, but I was a little different with 4. I went with Mania 30 because it was the first WrestleMania that was on the WWE Network. And I thought to myself, that's kind of an historic deal. That was the day the Undertaker streak ended, and that was also Daniel Bryan winning the world title to close out WrestleMania. And it was the first time, we had anything airing on the network. So I think that's a pretty huge deal.
That is pretty good. Next up, Craig Hallett came at us with the list, and he has the Super J Cup. I'm going to assume 94 on there. Another one I'm mad I didn't include because you got Liger, Benoit, I believe Sasuke was on that. All the great light heavyweights of the time just going nuts. You got WrestleMania 2 on his list. He has Great American Bash. Not sure which one. Starrcade, which, again, I'm going to assume 83. And if we're going to assume the first pay-per-view, if they don't put a year after it, what was the first Great American Bash? Was that a War Games?
Oh, man, it's funny. I thought about this today, and I had trouble with that because the first Great American Bash I remember was kind of like a tour, and they were torn. But they did tour with the War Games, as you mentioned it. So, and that was the first one, obviously, where J.J. Dillon got his shoulder separated, too.
Yep. Great American Bash, even if you look at it as an event, that was one of those, that was probably, would you say, Dusty at his biggest, trying to make this a country music thing with wrestling as a tour, had Waylon Jennings on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you think about it, Dusty and Vince had a lot of similarities in certain ways. Obviously, Dusty liked to keep it more on the wrestling aspect, but boy, Dusty could put on a big show and be a big promoter and flamboyant and had big ideas himself, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Now, Ryan Damon comes at us with the next list. He's got WrestleMania, WrestleMania 3, and then it just says SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, Barely Legal. I'm assuming these aren't his favorite magazines, and I don't know which SummerSlam he's counting.
Maybe he just means the original.
That's true. I mean, if you want to go Royal Rumble, you go that first Rumble. That was the first time that Vince counteracted something with something free on TV. And then, like you said, Barely Legal 97 was that first ECW pay-per-view.
I love the first Royal Rumble. As a kid, I still have fond memories of that because I never knew what we were actually getting. I remember watching it, and I didn't understand the concept. And then I started watching this thing where people just kept running in and out. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. So, the first Royal Rumble has fond memories for me, even though it was a TV special, as you said.
Yep. Next up, we got loyal listener to the show, Jesse from New Hampshire. He's got WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 17, Jesus, Bash at the Beach 96, Starrcade 83, All In, and then he's got, as an honorable mention, Barely Legal 97.
Very good weed over here.
Randy Osga, loyal listener to the show, his list includes I agree with Jesse, so that saves it. And I gotta ask, Randy seems like a cheese pizza type guy.
Mhm.
I wonder if he's okay if the cheese is burnt. Or like when he gets a vanilla shake, if it's double vanilla, is that cool or is that getting too spicy? Randy, we need to know these things.
You have to ask him. I'm sure Randy slip in Joe's DMs for that and let him know what's up.
Chris
Like
Zauha,
double vanilla shake.
always gonna be Zoucha to me, is he has WrestleMania 3, Survivor Series 97, WrestleMania 14, Bash at the Beach 96, and Barely Legal 97.
Yeah, it's the second time that Survivor Series 97 made a list, I should say.
Yeah, what was on the Survivor Series 97?
That was the infamous Montreal Screwjob.
Oh, Jesus.
That's where Bret Hart got.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. So, I mean, in retrospect, too, I mean, it was very interesting because we knew Bret was leaving for WCW. And, like, what a wild thing. We knew, and this, like, we have a future, obviously, list we're going to be talking about, future episode for 531 is Top Feuds. And you'll see Bret and Michaels make that list a few times. And I got to say, like, that pay-per-view and Bret and IHBK, one thing about that time period, and I can see why it resonated with that pay-per-view, a lot of unpredictability because the lines definitely got blurred by then. And I don't think the lines have ever been blurred quite as well since Bret and HBK because of how authentic it was back then.
Very true. Now, Benji Fido has a list, and
I love that name.
he's got WrestleMania 3, and then I wrote down Survivor Series 87, but I feel like it was 97 with the amount of votes that 97 has been getting.
Well, Survivor Series 87 was the original, so who knows?
Okay, yeah, maybe. I didn't really double check these before we started recording, so it very well could be. King of the Ring 98 is his third choice, and then he only gave us 4, and he rounded it out with SummerSlam 92.
Interesting. SummerSlam 92 was Wembley Stadium. That was Bret Hart and the Bulldogs. Famously, Bret, I'm fucked. I broke crack all night. Mr. Hitman. And King of the Ring 98 makes it a second time, too. That is, by the way, if you're not remembering that one, is where Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the cell, and he was broken in half.
I actually knew that because when my brother sent me his list, he had originally sent me Wrestle Kingdom 14, which I'm like, that was this year. And he said the one with the Okada Omega match. So I'm like, all right, I think that's 11. And then I instantly messaged him back, did you mean King of the Ring 96 and not 98? And he goes, nah, 98, Hell in the Cell. And then I actually had to look it up, and I'm like, oh, wow, how'd that make it past me? So, favorite of the show, Josh Dunn, got back to us at the 11th hour. And his list is Bash at the Beach 96, WrestlePalooza 98, WrestleMania 6, Money in the Bank 2011, and then he has All Out. I don't know if he meant all. I don't know if that was all in. I could have fucked that up.
Interesting list, nonetheless. Mania 6, one of the famous memes in the history of wrestling we see to this day. Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior, chest to strength. Hogan, down to the Warrior, brother.
And even though AJ is not here with us in person this week, he is in here. He's here with us in spirit, and we're giving him the main event spot. He's got WrestleMania 12, When Worlds Collide, Bash at the Beach 96, WrestleMania 3, and I feel like we stole his thunder for this one, but Over the Edge 99 rounds out his top 5.
Yeah, okay. Interesting list. Well, what do you got here? Who's coming up the most on here? Obviously, Mania 3 and 1 and Bash at the Beach 96.
If we're going to pick between Mania 3 and 1, who do you want to give it to? We've already laid out the case for it. 1 was the big gamble. 3 was that industry-changing main event. I'm going to give it to 3 just because, yeah, it's worth it to have that gamble, But then 3 is that gamble starting to pay off and being one of the bigger events they put on there.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. They're probably going to have a hard time convincing me 3 wasn't the biggest pay-per-view ever. But let's continue on. 3 makes the list.
All right. We got, you said Bash at the Beach 96 on a lot of lists.
Sure.
Let's put Bash at the Beach 96 up against Starrcade 83, because 83 popped up on a few lists.
You know what? Starrcade 83, that's the start of NWA wrestling. And boy, I look at that fondly, and those are some of my favorite memories.
We also know how you don't think that Flair Harley feud is shit, though.
No. I want to correct that. I didn't like that match at Starrcade 83. Flair Harley could fucking go. Fucking dumbass Gene Kaninsky, who was probably drunk, stumbled all over the ring, screwed up that match. AJ agrees with me. We know what we're talking about.
Don't you sully the good goddamn name of Gene Kaninsky.
He ain't shit. Listen. Anyway, but that being said, there's no argument with the numbers. Bash at the Beach 96, WCW, that's the most influential time in NWA/WCW history. That is the start of the NWO angle. It gets no bigger.
All right, so we got Starrcade 83, WrestleMania 3.
Starrcade 83. I said Bash at the Beach 96.
Oh, did you? Shit.
That's what I'm saying. Look another one, you jabroni.
Oh, that's why we shouldn't do this when I'm hungry, because we're all over the place.
Looks like you're thinking about a sausage sandwich. I'm here trying.
Also, email us if we forgot your list this week, because I feel like we left somebody out. Ooh, it's going to be hard for this last one, because...
I don't know. ECW Barely Legal 97 made quite a few lists.
That's what I was looking at. Let's put Barely Legal 97 on there, because their first pay-per-view, that's a big move.
Yeah.
And I think...
Eric Bischoff said that ECW was not even a pimple on a hamster's ass.
Oh, somebody listened to this week's 83 Weeks featuring TNA Hard Justice 2010.
Yeah, I believe so.
All right, so now it's not too hard to figure out who's going to be the first one gone in true 5-3-1 fashion.
Unfortunately, yes. The ECW, what is that? Now, it's an awesome brand. I'm not Eric Bischoff, but before we fucking say that, I'm, quoting Eric here. But when you put it in the big scheme of things, it's definitely not as big as the other two pay-per-views. Yeah,
it's not as big as Bash at the Beach 96 or, like we talked about, WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
So now...
I gotta go Mania 3, man.
What's that?
I gotta go Mania 3. It's the golden era. It's the biggest match of all time. I'm sorry.
I was gonna see if there was any debate to it, but there really isn't. I mean, both featured Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean... Hogan can only be so big at the end of his career, I think. When you see him in WrestleMania 3, that's when he's at, like, the height of... Or starting to be at the height of his Hulkamania.
Yeah, pinnacle. Absolutely.
And, Dave, you know what the music means. That means we have picked a top pay-per-view that has changed the industry. And I don't think it's a surprise to many people that it is WrestleMania 3 put on by the McMahon Dynasty. As always, get a hold of us on Twitter at Working Fans Wrestling Podcast. Is that the Facebook page name? I'm pretty sure. We're up to almost 1,000 people, so don't worry about the name. Just search Working Fans Podcast. WorkingFansPodcast.com. I botched that almost as bad as AJ. We'll see you guys next week.
Guys, thank you for listening to the 531 here on YouTube this week. If you like what you hear, you can always find us on Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and on the Apple Podcast where you can subscribe and also give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate you listening. We want your feedback, 531, and if you agree with us, if you disagree with us, we also want you to let us know, and let us know what your 531 would be. Come up with a top 5 and let us know, and we'll tell you why you're wrong. And in order for us to do that, please contact us on Twitter. We're at Fans Working. Facebook page, Working Fans Wrestling Pod. Email workingfanswrestlingpod@gmail.com. It's very important that you actually contact us on these platforms because we want this to be your interactive place to talk wrestling.